Okay, I'm ready. Let's get started. I see the questions, and I'm happy to answer whatever. I'm just glad to be here today. Well, it was a challenge, but it led to a lot of interesting. So Jay York says, "I'm so excited to meet this author. A Year Without Beauty Products." Wow. So yeah, it was a challenge, but I learned a lot about myself and certainly about the world we live in too. I see from there's a question here from Passion for Fiction. Have you kept up with your beauty cleanse since concluding the book? And that's a great question because the answer is yes and no. My approach has changed. I do different things now. Instead of concealing, I enhance. So I have a different approach to when I use beauty products. I've spent a lot of time working toward getting green products in my home, and that's all personal care products. You know, for my kids, for myself. I read labels a lot more, so in that sense, the cleanse is still going on. But today, I I feel more comfortable with the default of a natural face with nothing on. Instead of feeling like that is a thing to correct, I definitely feel like that's okay and good. And then if I want to do more, or if a professional situation, suggests I do more, then I can do that joyfully and not necessarily fearfully. I hope that answers your question. The most important thing, so Shelley Mead asks, what was the most important thing you took away from writing The Beauty Experiment? And the short answer is the word mindfulness. So, this, you guys see me better. Mindfulness just is thoughtfulness about everything, about the beauty products that I use, also the way I go shopping, also the environment that we live in as people in a world full of consumer products and advertising. So I think what I really took away from it was a step back from the mayhem and an ability to say, is this really serving me? Is this making me feel better about myself? Or am I kind of playing into the hands of I don't know, old stereotypes or family training or consumer culture? It gave me a cushion against that, and I think that's probably the most important thing. And the way this is embodied, I think, is the relationship I have with my inner voice. In the book, there's a back and forth between me and this difficult inner voice that's very critical and very carping, and that really has changed for the better. I feel that my inner voice, I've either retrained her or she's just grown up to be more accepting of me and more compassionate of me, and then thus more compassionate towards others. So Laura McDonald asks, how did other women react? And this is interesting because my good friends that I saw every day, and most of them were at this time in their lives stay-at-home moms. That doesn't, most of us had worked, all of us had worked outside the home before. Some of us continued to work outside the home while we were having children. But we really were all facing many of the same challenges at the same time, and they didn't really bat an eye when I changed my look, possibly because I look so sleep deprived beforehand, and a haircut always perks you up, even if it's a really drastic and extreme haircut like mine was. and I think we were all just trying to be cheerleaders for each other, so nobody was a downer as far as the immediate change. Um, I think what something that happened about halfway through was um, I started to feel static from this person, from this. This was sort of somebody on the sort of toward the edge of the circle, the mom circle that I knew, and she and I wasn't quite sure why I was feeling this static, but I definitely could feel her doing the up down up. I mean, we all know this kind of checking you out top to bottom and seeing what you're wearing and is it cool, something, things like that. And I couldn't quite figure out what the deal was, and I realized that it was a lot about women in professional situations feeling required to wear makeup and feeling required to use their beauty as a professional tool or a signal of competence, and to flout that rule was almost, this is this person's interpretation, was perhaps like saying that all that work that women do to use that tool to get ahead, it doesn't matter and isn't important and isn't valid. And so I understood her objections, and I mean it's still guessing, but I feel that I had to take a look at what I was trying to prove. Was I trying to say that women should never have to wear makeup in the workplace or anytime, anywhere, and that we should never shop? I mean, was I being that extreme, or was I struggling to find my own place? And ultimately, of course, it was really struggling to find my own place. Jay York asks, did you find people interacting with me differently? And I would have to say, sometimes yes. I mean, we all remember that scene. I think it's in Mystic Pizza, where Julia Roberts, she puffs out her hair and then she pulls her hair back and she tries to get a cab, and of course, or she tries to get they have a flat tire and someone picks her up and they wouldn't pick up the man she was with. And I think there might have been some of that going on, but I was so busy. I mean, really, I was so busy with this little infant, and my husband and I had the great fortune of traveling around Asia at the time. And travel is so all-consuming, and an infant is so all-consuming. And I was working on a big novel at the time, and I don't know that I noticed that much. I mean, people still shook my hand, and if I asked for a deli sandwich, they would still make me one. So it wasn't as if I was becoming scorned. And granted, I was a young woman, and I was fairly, I wasn't dealing with any kind of extreme appearance situation. I decided not to shave my head, and I think had I done that, and my husband was the one who advised against it, I think had I done that, I might have sensed a more extreme reaction. But I had hair, pretty much like what it is now, probably more like this, like more like a man haircut. So it wasn't extreme. I mean, I didn't have people being outwardly mean to me, and I think maybe I was afraid that would happen, and totally didn't. So let's see. Emily Ann Lewis asks, what is the most important thing that you want women to take away from your book? I think probably a good laugh. I mean, I wrote it to be thought-provoking, but also entertaining, so that readers would be able to look at themselves with compassion and a sense of humor. Hopefully, because I had to learn how to do it. I mean, I was very hard on myself. This inner voice was she was a disaster right after I had a baby, and I think we all could use. I think many of us could use some training in compassion toward ourselves, as in addition to the world. There was another question here. It went away. I'm not sure where it went. Liz asks, do you choose to wear beauty products made with more natural ingredients after your cleanse? Yes, I do. I read labels more carefully, and I think one of the hardest things is trying to figure out a way, and maybe many of you have dealt with this as well, just trying to figure out how to introduce some of the knowledge that I gained. There's some great websites. Environmental Working Group has a website called Skin Deep, where you can type in the name of your beauty product and find out everything that's in it and what the dangers of those ingredients are. And I do use that fairly often. And I haven't found a good way of other than sort of generally suggesting, but of spreading the word about that inside my own family and friends, saying, listen, could you guys please always give me beauty products that don't contain bad stuff, or if you're gonna, gifts. I think that's a very personal and touchy subject. So I have pretty much limited it to myself and what I do, and hope that other people get the word. It's the information about cosmetics and what's in them is out there for people to see. So I got a question from the Beheld. Hey, August. Can you speculate on how your beauty fast might have been different if you were trying to date during it? This, I think, is an excellent question, because, and people have asked things around this before, as far as, well, you were married, so you didn't have to worry about trying to attract a partner. And I think that's very valid. However, that sort of goes along with the idea that once you get married, you're all settled. And having been in a relationship for 15 years with the same person, I can say you're never settled, and you always want to try to attract that other person in some way. And that attraction functions on many different levels. Your appearance is just one of them. Your attitude is another huge one. So it's maybe not quite as different as it might seem. I think particularly if you're in a relationship with somebody. Dating, on the other hand, I think you would probably attract a different rephrase. It depends on where you go. Probably depends on where you go to find dates. If you go to readings at bookstores, then it might not matter. It might not happen. That you have a hard time. If your dating scene is a bar scene, you might have a tough time. I'm not sure. Unfortunately and fortunately, I married somebody that I was friends with throughout college, and so we had a lot of friendship stuff to work through, but the initial attraction sort of grew out of that, as opposed to the initial attraction being the first thing. So it perhaps put our relationship on a different footing. The friendship and the intellectual connection was there first, and the sexual attraction was sort of added on to it. So it might be, you might have a relationship that starts off on different footing. I don't know. I see a question here from A Victory. Loved your book. How do you find people are reacting now, particularly people in the beauty industry? This is fascinating to me. I was shocked that I got a media request from makeup.com, and then another one from a magazine in the UK called Vitality. It's a beauty industry magazine. It's not even like Allure or something. It's an industry magazine, and for the beauty industry, for people who cut hair and do makeup and stuff. And they were really wonderful. I haven't been able to get the article yet, so I'm hoping that it's sort of flattering or supportive. But I'm not. I think there might be an assumption that I'm anti-beauty, but it's not at all true. I mean, one of my closest hairdressers here, one of my closest friends here is a hairdresser. She lives down the street, and she and I have talked about this, in that it's more about defining your own relationship to what's out there, as opposed to trying to keep up with what's there and figure out. It's an inside out approach, and this is something that I think many of the best beauty professionals talk about anyway. They promote this anyway in their clients. Find out who. I mean, there's this Style by Jury and all these shows. Sort of find out who you are, and then go out and use the beauty tools to express that. So the approaches are not opposed, and I think the beauty industry has actually been fairly understanding of that. Either that, or they think the fresh makeupless face is a trend and they want to capitalize on it. So I don't know. Prairie Dawn says, "Hi Phoebe, I'm curious what were the top 3 items you couldn't wait to buy at the end?" And these come very quickly to mind. I had terrible bras. I desperately needed new bras. They were held together by safety pins and stuff. So I ran out and but I shopped differently when I went out. After the end of the experiment, instead of trying on a bunch of things and finding 3 or 4 different ones that worked, I tried on a whole bunch and found the one that fit really well, and then bought 5. And in fact, no, I don't have one on today, but they still own them all. I have the same bras, and I rotate them because it's just the best. And I know some people really are empowered by this shopping technique to buy 5 jeans that work for them and then wear them for the next 15, 20 years. So that's one of the shopping things that sort of shifted. I also was really, really hot to get orthotic shoes because my feet were all messed up, so I went out and bought silver Birkenstocks, and felt really happy in them. And I thought it was going to be hot to get concealer, but what happened was I went out to Waitrose, the drugstore in Hong Kong, and I bought some, and I took it home and I put it on my desk, or my the vanity table that had turned into my husband's desk, and I didn't wear it. I just left it there in the tube, kind of rolling around, and I never really went back to it on a regular basis. So that was kind of weird, but kind of cool that happened. Emily Ann Lewis says, "I feel this is something young girls need to know about, feeling good in their own skin. Do you think this has reached that group?" I'm not sure yet, and I've been looking for avenues. I'm hoping to connect with any professors or people who teach those upper levels of high school, or the 18-year-old college freshmen, because I feel that I don't know, but I think this book might offer a readable entree into many, many women's issues / gender issues that aren't just women's issues, and introduce a lot of conversation that could be had. So if anyone who's got any ideas, please let me know, because I'm still trying to figure out how to reach those guys. Savvy Bookworm says, "A lot of women put so much importance on makeup, jewelry, and clothes for special occasions and outings. Was it difficult not to compare yourself to others in these situations?" I had to go to a black tie event, and I sweated it. I wasn't sure what to do, and I thought about it a lot, because I knew that I was going to feel a little uncomfortable and even a little sad to look plain. So I went out. I figured it out, I thought, and I went out and I bought a rose, this lovely, gorgeous, this red rose, and I wore it behind my ear with a plain black dress and black shoes that I had already had. And it actually did the trick. It made me feel wonderful. It made me feel dressed up. It made me feel excited to be at the event. I did compare myself, and I did feel, oh gosh, I don't look like those guys. But you know what? In pictures of that black tie event afterward, I actually thought I looked pretty good. And I was surprised at how happy I was with a picture of myself wearing nothing, just a black dress, a very simple spaghetti strap black dress, hair that wasn't colored, and a rose in my ear. But I was so damn happy, and I was having so much fun that in the picture I looked great. And I realized that something had changed. You know, was it my mind that had changed, or my face, or I don't know, but it was kind of a magical moment when I saw that picture. Connie-san says, Mrs. Connie says, I came into the chat a bit late now, but wanted to say I'm now unable to wear makeup due to allergies, can't wear eye makeup at all. At first I thought I would never want to be seen in public, but have somewhat gotten used to going out looking plain. Still, I wish I could use makeup again. It would no doubt give me a perk up. You know, I think there is something to that, the feeling that you freshened yourself up. Perhaps there's some other way to do it that doesn't irritate your skin. I mean, I think there are a lot of products out there. I don't know, maybe deep breathing? I don't know, maybe a full night's sleep. I discovered that made so much difference in feeling perked up. But I know what you mean. For me, I've found a great substitute is the color that I'm wearing. That makes me feel like I've dressed up, or that perks me up because I can see it. I mean, you can't see your face with makeup on, but you can see the color that you're wearing, and it can just sort of brighten your whole mood. So sometimes that's my substitute for that perk up. Jean Yee says hi. Hi. Emily Ann Lewis asks, I've been embracing a more natural way. You are inspiring. Well, thank you, Emily. You know, there's so many women who are inspiring, and I think having come through this, I try to spend more time connecting with the inspiring things that women are doing in the world that have absolutely nothing to do with beauty. And so, you know, if anyone who's out there wants to follow me on Facebook, I'm trying to put stuff up there by other women that are they're just blowing me away. And I think sort of a dawning activism was one of these great offshoots of doing this book. So I'm proud of that, because I think we all have moments in our lives when we can't look outward, but I'm happy to be in a moment in my life where I can look outward now. The Beheld asks, in what ways did writing about and publicizing your beauty fast shift your thinking on beauty? It validated the intellectual component. I think that I dismissed beauty concerns as trivial and not worth time spent thinking about them or writing about them. And once I began, I had to recognize, and I was very reluctant to recognize, but I had to recognize the depth of this subject and how it had shaped me. And I think writing about it gave it a validity, and also reading other women writing about beauty gave it a validity and gave my femaleness a validity. I mean, I was having voice problems in my writing before I worked on this book, and I think I was trying to channel this kind of Hemingway-esque male literary voice of the ages, and it just wasn't working for me. And I had to somehow come to grips with not a literary femininity, but a literary femaleness. And I think this book helped me find that, as did Virginia Woolf. And she, you know, she was a favorite very early on of mine. And then when I found her short story, The Dress, it's in a collection. I can't think of the name. I think it's in The Haunted House. I think it's in her collection of short stories, The Haunted House. It's the best piece of writing on fashion that I've ever encountered, and it validated this work, writing on beauty as an intellectual exercise. Prairie Dawn asks, do you think Do you think your experiment was easier in Hong Kong than it would be here? I think it was harder. Hong Kong is very, very dressed up, as many cities around the world are, where people, running shoes you only wear for running, and windbreakers are for delivery guys, and people really dress up to do anything, to go to the grocery store. Some people do, some people do not, but I feel that that I think it was the extreme gorgeousness of Hong Kong and the extreme formality that led me, a newbie from San Francisco, to think, oh my God, I can't possibly keep up with this. I don't know how to buy a Chanel suit or a knockoff Chanel suit. I can't do it. I'm just gonna be me. And I think that would be easier to do in the US. Jagged Otter asks, has anyone asked you if you explored this as a feminist issue? A few people have. Interestingly, the journalists from the UK, and I spoke to somebody from Amsterdam, and I spoke to somebody in the Bay Area. Those areas have pinpointed this and said, so where does this fit in as far as feminism? And I was sort of waiting for that and wondering when that would come and what would come of that question. And the answer is, for me, I mean, to claim that this isn't a feminist book would sort of be like saying that I'm not a mammal, I'm a human, Of course, its roots are in a cry for equality between men and women. I feel that this is a friend of mine said, maybe you should call yourself a post-feminist voice. And I thought that was interesting, because I do feel now, having gone through it, that in the aftermath, what I feel like fighting for is something that would spring from feminism, but I would maybe call familyism, and that is demands that our family situations and our work situations get better for men, for women, for caregivers, for breadwinners, for people who have high-powered jobs, for people who have part-time jobs, people who have high-powered jobs and aren't getting enough time to go home to their families, for people who have part-time jobs and aren't getting leave or enough health care. For caregivers who might have unsure immigrant status, there's a whole world of work to be done, but it's not just for women. It's for families, it's for men and women, it's for kids, it's for workers. So I feel like we're sort of, in my book, moving in that direction in the US. And as far as on the global scene, women and girls education and maternal fetal health care is sort of the other prong that remains more female oriented. But these are, as Hillary Clinton said, this is not about gender. This is about improving the world. So there you have it. Hallie Casser-Jane says, so do you like doing interviews? Hi, Hallie. So nice to see your typing here. I do like doing interviews. They're very fun. I've been very honored to have several. I'm not sure I'm getting any better. I sort of talk more, and I should be maybe keeping things short. But it's been wonderful fun. It's been wonderful fun, and I just hope the message about the book is getting out there, and that there's a word of mouth spread that starts to happen. I was lucky enough to have some great media attention, but I think the real people who will get the book sold and keep the conversation are people who've actually read the book and then recommend it to a friend or to a book group. A Victory says, did you read more about beauty, such as feminist theory or anthropological perspectives, during your fast as opposed to magazines? I wish that I had had the time to do that. No, I was actually reading a lot of stuff about gross anatomy and dissection in medical schools for the novel I was working on. So I didn't do the background during the experiment. I did more of the background after the experiment when I realized I'd opened all these cans of worms and hadn't made a lot of progress, or had made personal progress but hadn't made the cultural contextual progress that I wanted to make. So I went back and read a lot of stuff. I read The Beauty Myth. I read, believe it or not, I hadn't read The Feminine Mystique. I hadn't read that. I had to read that. Happy birthday, Feminist Mystique. Happy 60th anniversary. I had to go back and sort of catch up on my women's studies retrospectively, and that continues to be an interest of mine. I keep reading in that vein. Between Friends blog asks, have you received any backlash regarding your beauty experiment from the makeup industry? It is a considerably large billion-dollar industry that thrives on selling perfection in a bottle. Did they take kindly to your experiment? It's hard to know. I think just between you guys here, my wonderful PR person, sent out press releases about the book to all the women's magazines, and there hasn't been so much of a response. Whereas some of the international publications or the TV has been a little more. But at the same time, I was able to be on Katie Couric, and she was supportive, and she has advertisers like Dove and, some of these other, although, they have their campaign. So I don't really know. I mean, I haven't gotten mean notes on my windows or anything like that. But I think it might just be that they didn't want to cover the book, or they didn't feel like the book was interesting to them, those women's magazines, because places like makeup.com or this other journal in the UK that does only makeup coverage decided to do an interview. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think we're all kind of on the fence here, and hopefully people will encounter an interview with me where they see that I'm on the fence too, and that we were all working this out. Angie asked, has this led you to try another experiment, and what will that be? I don't know. I've thought about it. I've tinkered around with things that would be in the family. I think I might try some other people's experiments, like the gentleman whose book I can't think of right now, but he's tried to live low impact living, no impact man. I need to check in with him and see if we can do that, because when you have a family, you really start to think about waste and your garbage and where that stuff goes and how you can reduce your footprint, things like that. But my next project that I'm very excited about, and it's still in the generative stages, is a novel about hormones. I feel that we're all living in a soup of communication between each other, mothers to children, husbands to wives, girlfriends to girlfriends, and we're having this conversation that's being conducted by our hormones and our cycles, and we don't always give voice to what's going on. So look for that from me in the next couple years. Jean Yi asks, I feel your beauty experiment message is well written and needed for today's stressful times. Well, thank you, Jean. I think we could all use a little less stress and a little more time. And I think dialing down the beauty regime on a daily basis definitely has given me more time and less stress, which I'm very happy about. And I think there are other things that creep in too. I think our devices, our phones and our iPads is another area where a measured approach to how much time we spend using them is probably useful. And I think most people would probably agree and probably already do that a little bit. Laura McDonald says, with no jewelry, did the lack of a wedding ring cause any confusion in social situations? No, I wasn't out having anybody hit on me, so I did wear my engagement ring for most of the experiment. I think I probably took it off a few times, but I always kept the wedding band, the actual little smaller one, where are you guys here? the smaller one on, and that's what I wear now on a daily basis. It's very similar to my husband's, and I save the diamond that I love and that I treasure for special occasions. So there wasn't any confusion. Plus, most of the time I had a kid strapped to me, so I wasn't out and about single very often. Golden Mane says, what would you say to those people who are embarrassed by their appearance due to a very obvious defect such as a large birthmark? I would say that I probably have more to learn from them than they would ever have to learn from me. And I would welcome their experiences and their stories and their own avenues toward self-acceptance on my website. I would love to hear from anyone dealing with that kind of situation, because I might guess, but I'd probably get it wrong, because it's so personal. And I imagine that there are so many different experiences and so many varieties of handling that, accepting it, embracing it, rejecting it, wanting to fix it, wanting to show it, that all I can say is share with us, because I haven't dealt with that specific thing. The Beheld says, love what you said about literary femaleness. Wondering how men, besides your husband, have reacted to your experiment. When I told my guy friends about it, the standard reaction across the board was, that's what I do every day. And I got kind of tired of that, because I think it's disingenuous. I think there's just as much a box for men to fit into as far as appearance as there is for women. It might not cost as much, but it's still out there. And so, yeah. So I feel that men have their own work to do in this area, and whenever I get that hardy har reaction, I try to elicit that inner awareness that men could perhaps profit from. You know, what can we do? Shelley Mead says, why do you think women automatically think that more makeup means more beauty? Maybe because we live in an era of perfectionism, so that the more work you do, the closer you get to being good, as opposed to good is something you already have and you just find ways to express it. I mean, those are sort of mental shifts. I also feel like it dates back to 50s advertising and the spread of that advertising culture, that and you know, our very early female entrepreneurs who said there are no, I think it was Estee Lauder, I'm not sure if it was Estee Lauder, but I think it might have been, who said there are no ugly women, only women who don't care, or only women who don't try. So I think this is a very ingrained idea in American beauty culture, in popular beauty culture, and it might be very different in other places. I'm not sure, because I don't have access to the language, and the language is the level where I think this kind of bias exists. This, you have to try to be beautiful, not show your beauty, but try to be beautiful. I think it's a good point, and I think there's work to be done there. Kihada Queasy says, I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, but I definitely want to check it out. How long did you do this experiment? Officially, I did it for 13 months. I went for a year, and then when I came to the end, I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to go back to using a whole bunch of products. I was afraid to enter that consumerist society, or whatever. I was afraid to enter that arena of consumption and start doing it again. So I held off, and I I wasn't sure what I was going to do or how. And that was when I started to think that I better write a book about it so that I had some way of working out these questions that were still unanswered. Jagged Otter says, do you now see beauty differently? Has it changed how you judge beauty in others? Yes. Yes. I am still aware of what I feel is an almost reflexive. I'm a very visual person. I'm always noticing things and pointing out colors and shapes and light and shade and negative space, and there's a kind of an artistic eye in my mind, and I'm not saying it's a good one or that I'm talented, but it just is there. I'm a seer. I'm seeing things all the time and pointing them out to my kids, and I think this experiment has caused me to challenge some of the particularly Western bias that eye has developed throughout my life. The bias that eye developed after 30 years of looking at women's magazines, the bias that eye developed after looking and learning about Western art. And it's an active thing to try to break open that bias and see beyond it. But once you have a couple instances of really perceiving beauty that doesn't fit within a mold, you never forget. You really don't. I mean, once you have that experience of looking at your plain face with nothing on it, even tired, and loving what you see with all its imperfections, it's hard to forget. It's all. I mean, beauty, I think, is very close to spirituality, and it's you kind of tip over a little bit into seeing past the constructed matrix to, you know, the beauty of the lamp and the table and your actual head. And it's a little freaky, but I feel that I was going in, you know, I've gone in that direction, and though I live in the everyday world, I feel I still have access to that. Liz L820 says, I know you have a daughter. What do you do when she wants to try on makeup and sparkles? I don't have a lot of makeup in the house. She doesn't see me putting on makeup that often, so makeup is a lesser thing. She's 6 right now. So as far as most of this is concerned, we're still working on healthy eating and clean clothes and wearing enough layers for the hideous weather that's going on outside right now. But when she does see those things come out, she likes to try on. I still have some, 2-inch heels, and I do put on mascara when I go out on date night with my husband, or I change, I put on earrings, and she's kind of like, whoa, what's going on? And of course she wants to try and play. And so what I concentrate on is letting her see me enjoy it. That it's fun, that it's dress up, that it's for parties and special events, and that she can do it too. We went to New Year's Eve together, and I said, oh man, I just want to wear something fun. I know, I'll get out my sparkly shirt. And I wore my sparkly, I was like, oh, I want my sparkly shirt too. Her grandmother gives her a lot of sparkly shirts. So we put it on together, and we had a fun time. So I don't know what's going to happen when we get up in teen years. But it's for her to experiment with. But I think I'll be very careful to tell her what she's doing. When you put on lipstick, you're exaggerating your sexuality, and your sexuality is a great thing, and you need to be in touch with it before anybody else is in touch with it. And then if someone else is going to be in touch with it, you should be aware of who you're inviting in. So I think I would start with that, and then see what she does with the outside. I mean, I think there's a bit of a disconnect in our culture about sex and appearance, but really, that looking pretty is great and sex is something you do, that has nothing to do with how you look, but you know, we're biological creatures, and you're sending, what kind of messages are you sending? If you're going to send a message, know what you're doing. I think that's kind of where I go. Tanya says, I love that you did this experiment. It would be so liberating. How did you feel the first time you went out with no makeup? The first time I went out with no makeup, it did take extra courage. I had the flu. I was sick as a dog. I was down for 3 days, and then I was going to go to this mom kitty group with my daughter, and I sweated through my t-shirt in the taxi on the way over. I was like, I look terrible. You know, I'm not sick anymore, but I still look like I'm sick. This is terrible. And you know, it was so awesome that my girlfriends were so sweet. We're like, hey, how you feeling? It's so good to see you. You know, what's up? Come in. And I felt very lucky that I was able to start off. And after, the really important thing is that I felt like I missed my under eye concealer because I was so tired all the time. And I really had to break that habit. And I had withdrawal. And I'm glad that I did, because I really needed to take a look at my sleep habits, and I needed to improve them. And I needed to figure out how to get more sleep. And concealer wasn't going to make the problem go away. Concealer was a Band-Aid. I had to fix the sleep. And a couple years in, I'm glad that I have. A Victory says, do you find more pleasure in grooming since the end of your experiment rather than an anxious approach to making up? Yes. Yeah. However, one very interesting thing is that, you know, in the last couple months, I've gone from being an author at home who very rarely interacts with anyone outside of my husband, my friends, and the fellow parents at my kids' school, to somebody on national television. And that was a big change. And having to find a way to be in that more public world made me, for the second time, appreciate the demands on professional women. And I had anxiety about going on Katie Couric and not knowing what to wear and not having anything appropriate. And I think every time we're in, you know, my experiment was caused by one of these difficult moments of personal change. And here I am again at another one. And I found myself having anxiety about my appearance. And that was so interesting to me. I thought, oh, well, this is a tick. When I have these big moments of personal change, I'm going to be anxious about my appearance. So having the knowledge that that was happening, that in itself was liberating, because I knew that I could go about it with all these tools that I had developed for myself, and I could do a good job, and I could honor my anxiety and deal with it in other ways other than running out and buying a lot of new stuff, or, you know, spending too much money on a special, you know, hair bleaching or something. You know, I didn't have to salve my anxiety through my appearance. There were other ways, and then I could have fun with the appearance while also taking into account the fact that you do need to look good sometimes. So it's been interesting to see that come up again. Emily Ann Lewis says, how hard was it to get this book published? I haven't had another book published, so I don't have that much to compare it to. Although perhaps that answers your question. My other books have not, well, there's only one, and I know that it needs work, so I don't know if that's fair. But I have to say that interest in this particular topic and this book was very high from the moment I pitched it. And that was a big surprise to me. And it you know, has kept on going. I mean, I have a wonderful agent who worked really hard to get it out to a lot of editors, and the editors, I was lucky enough to get a really great editor who worked really hard to get it approved and then stuck with it when my first draft wasn't quite where it needed to be. So I think I've been very lucky, but I also think people feel the topic is timely. And I hope I've done justice to it, so Hope that answers your question. BookTrib says they only have a few minutes. Prairie Dawn asks, what advice would you go back in time and give to your 14-year-old self? You know, I'd tell her to go back to the OBGYN and ask if there was anything to do for a hormone imbalance that I dealt with all through teenage years and all through my 20s, and was only corrected and figured out when I was out of college in my late 20s. I think I might have had an easier time had my hormones been working, cycling the way everyone else's hormones cycle. I think there's a lot of work to be done in women's health. I think we are still behind. I think there's a systemic approach to women's health that often is not used, and so instead we end up treating symptoms instead of the whole organism. So I tell her to find a new OBGYN and keep asking questions, but too late now. Shelley Mead says, if you did a beauty experiment part 2, what would you do differently? Would you take more risks? If I did the beauty experiment again with a book deal in place, yes, I would take more risks, and I would probably do more things directed toward what a reader would want to hear about. But the reality was I did this experiment for myself and my kid and my family, my husband and my relationship. I did it for me, so I took notes for me, not thinking about what an engaging book would need. And that's a large part of why the book goes back and forth between the year of the experiment and the year now. And part of that was because I needed more material. And part of it was because I wanted to show that upside. And the year of my experiment was, in some ways, a downer. But it was a downer that led to a lot of learning that became very empowering and very positive. Oh no, BookTrib says we have so many great questions waiting for you. Unfortunately, time is running out, and it's time for me to announce today's winners. Hooray, the winners! Okay, so thank you everybody for tuning in. This was really, really fun. I hope I answered your questions, and if there's something, an issue that I didn't get a chance to address that you want to talk about, please come to the website and lay it on me, and we'll have a back and forth. Or connect up with me on Facebook, my Facebook page, and we'll keep the conversation going. All right. BookTrib says the winners are Jean Yee, Between Friends blog, Golden Mane 1, The Beheld, and Tanya Bishop. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and hope you enjoy those copies. If you happen to already have one, please feel free to give it away to a trusted friend if you want to. Thanks everyone. Thanks Savvy Bookworm. Thanks Emily Ann. Thanks Jagged Otter. Let me know if you need anything, or you want to talk, or if you have a book group that wants to Skype with the author. I'm happy to do that. I've done that before. So thanks, Shelley Mead. Okay. Not sure what to do other than to just keep chatting. Thanks, BookTrib. It was great.